What's going on, gentlemen? It's Monday, of course, and as you know, with Monday comes motivation, but I got a little bit of a different take on this. I know with this channel I always talk about motivation and just, always essentially coming from a positive perspective, more or less, right? But I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I think with anyone who ever does make some sort of motivational content, in the back of your mind, not that these things are false, but in the back of your mind, these things are often hard to adhere to when you're going through it. And I'm gonna be real with y'all, I have been going through it. I mean, some of you know, some of you don't know. Frankly, I would assume most of you don't care. But I've been an actor and a model for about 8 years now. And personally, I think I'm in a blessed position, right? I don't work for anyone. I'm extremely blessed to be able to work on projects and work on things and, essentially get paid for it, right? It's pretty cool knowing that at any given moment, I can get booked for something as simple as holding water, modeling a water bottle, shout out Zen Water, or things of that nature. But without making this so much about me, I kind of just want to talk about the perspective of positive thinking. And I'd like to start it with this one statement for myself. Firstly, before I even say this, I don't want anyone to assume or think I'm in like a bad mental place. I think we all go through challenges in life naturally, right? And I think it takes a strong person, more or less, to be willing to talk about these kind of things, or more so just speak on them in a sense where it's truthful and it's honest. And I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I'm 31 turning 32 this year. I know I don't look it. 31 turning 32 this year, and I've made the decision, at least so far, right? Because things are always subject to change. But I made the decision, and I've come to the conclusion that if I don't get a big break, that sounds stupid to say, but this is the best way I can explain it. But if I don't get a big break, I'm gonna do that. Obviously, I can't say what I want to say due to the analytics or the YouTube gods, right? And secondly, I'm not saying that as if it's an okay for you to do that. But here's my theory on all of this. And whether you agree with me or not, feel free to comment in the comments below. But here's my perspective on all these things. I don't see a point to living life if the next 30 or 40 years of said life is doing something you don't want to do. And this is where the motivation comes in, because when I truthfully think about what I want to do with my life and where I want to be, will.i.am has a great quote when he was living at home, trying to do this music thing. He would tell his parents, he's like, I have a job, I'm just not getting paid yet. And in my perspective, although yes, I am making a decent amount of money, it's not where I want to be. And I don't want anyone to think of what I'm saying here as like I'm coming from a place of privilege. First of all, I'm not. I'm demonstrably not. And that assumption would be demonstrably false. But I think what makes this motivating and worth sharing with y'all is that within that mindset, I think I found that motivational spark within me to want to keep going. And it's not like I was going to quit anyway, but I don't know, the way I'm going all about this is, I think within those moments of where I'm at the conclusion to which I am almost okay with that, if it means I won't have to live a life of doing something I don't want to do for the next 40 to 50 years. You know what I mean? I mean, listen, my brothers passed away when I was very young. I was in my very late teens to early 20s when both my brothers passed away. They both passed away in a span of a decade. Some luck, huh? And within that, just seeing them live their life and live it how they wanted to by their design motivated me in a way. It made me feel like, okay, well, I know life is short. I need to figure out the things that I want to do, and I need to attack them, right? This isn't a matter of me saying all these hopes and wishes, and then all of a sudden I now am just sitting here in hopes that something falls onto my lap. You know, I'm actively doing the work. And this message for you is, you know, you might be facing a crossroad. I fucked up. You might be facing a crossroad, whereas, you know, you're trying absolutely everything. You're giving it all you've got. And at the same time, though, things just aren't moving in the way not only you'd like them to, but in the way that you know they can. And regardless if you're a creative, an actor, a model, writer, whatever it is that you're trying to do, we've all come to those crossroads. And for a lot of people, they quit. You know, I made a post this morning on Instagram talking about that, whereas a lot of times people quit when things are at their absolute most difficult, when it's the absolute hardest. But really, that's when you get the biggest benefit, and really that's when those things in your life that you want to change end up changing. And it's an absolute necessity to be persistent regardless of those circumstances, regardless of what you're going through. You have to be persistent with it. And listen, again, at the end of the day, my example is just a very small example, you know, just a very minuscule version of how we're all feeling collectively, right? Life isn't getting easier for any of us, regardless of how you want to spin that. And even when you achieve these goals, you're still going to have new challenges. But in that, I ask, would having new challenges, better challenges, not make it worthwhile? You know, I'm not trying to live a life where I have no problems, I have no issues. That's not realistic. There's always going to be a challenge. There's always going to be something happening in your life. But I ask, is that not better than what you're going through right now? Like, wouldn't you trade up having money, like, you know, money issues, the kind of money issues where it's like, well, I could spend this or I could spend that, invest in this, invest in that, what are the APRs, et cetera, versus, oh, how am I going to pay my electric bill this month? How am I going to fucking pay my electric bill, afford food for my fridge, and save for, you know, emergencies or whatever the case may be? I would encourage you to be willing to want to switch problems, if that makes any sense. And I know a lot of this video is venting, and a lot of it is personally. You know, again, I'm blessed to be able to live by myself, make a decent income, doing the things that I want to do, but I want more. You know, that's not greed. I know that I can grow as an actor, model, whatever the case may be, creator, whatever the case is. And I know I can put in not only the work in order to make it happen, but also have the skills necessary to do that. And the same goes for you. If you're going to live your life either A, stuck at this crossroads trying to decide what you want, B, quitting on your goals and then deciding that, you know, I'm going to go ahead and just work a 9-to-5, whatever, for the next 40 years, I personally think you're selling yourself short. And someone nearby is dying. Unfortunately, I don't mean to laugh, but I don't know, I just wanted some comedic relief. I thought that was funny. So in closing, where do we go from here, right? Like, bear with me, y'all. Bear with me, y'all, my bad. I swear I don't live in a bad neighborhood. I swear to God, I don't live in a bad neighborhood. But no, seriously, where do we go from here? You know, we all have decisions to make, and we all have promises that we've made to ourselves, and it's on us to uphold them, you know? Failure to do that doesn't necessarily mean the end of the world, but I would argue that failure to do that would be the end of your world in hindsight. And I say that only because, you know, we grow up in a world that has a class system, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, right? Like, there are systems in place designed for not everyone to succeed. We all know this. But at the end of the day, we have to come to a conclusion and decide for ourselves, am I just going to succumb to that system and be like, all right, it is what it is? Or am I going to actually fucking try? And in the second half of this video, hopefully you stuck with me long enough. And if you've been here long enough and you appreciate the video, do me a favor, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 10K subscribers, and I want you to be a part of this community. Not even want, I kind of need you to be a part of this community because, first of all, I'm not trying to talk into a fucking vacuum. I'm not trying to just talk to the universe. If I wanted to talk and have no replies or no reactions to what I'm saying, I'd write a fucking journal, but I don't do that. I make these videos for a reason. But anyway, one thing I've noticed is that there are a lot of men people in general, but there are a lot of men in this case, since I'm talking to my guys. And if you're a woman who's watching this, what's up? But there are a lot of us who are okay with being losers. And I don't blame certain men for this. You know, you spend enough time on the internet and you'll quickly realize that a lot of guys who are not like at least 5'10" and up see themselves as cooked or disenfranchised. And although I think that's stupid, right? There are plenty of short people who've been successful in essentially whatever, you know, industry or facet that they've chosen. But not only is that stupid, but it's also very telling to our current state of society, right? We become so shallow as individuals and so inept in the understanding of our own selves that we forget, or purposely, I mean, I think it's purposeful, but we purposely forget what we bring to the proverbial table, right? And this isn't about dating or relationships. Frankly, no one brings anything to the table that's worth a relationship in today's day and age. Which brings me to a side point. I know I've made a lot of content talking about dating and relationships, and a lot of the content that I made, it might come off as though I'm bashing women. And, you know, I'm going to do a 180 on a lot of the content I've been making in that regard, simply because in light of me saying there are a lot of guys that are okay with being losers, I also realize that within that clique or that collective, there's also a healthy, or in this case unhealthy, but an unhealthy amount of men who are simply okay with consistently bashing women. Like, at this point, it's not even talking about social dynamics. I've spent enough time in these pages, like these MGTOW pages, these red pill adjacent pages, to just see how far we've come as men in regards to degradation, and not even having conversations that are stimulating enough or edifying enough for women to even be enticed into potentially changing their behaviors. A lot of what we talk about is not even regarding women exclusively. A lot of this shit is human behavior, which is something that I'm gonna focus more on, because that's the reality of it. The reality of it is not all these women are bad. Yes, is there like a large amount of them that are? Unfortunately, yes. But at the same time though, if we could say that for women, we of course have to say that for men. But now I'm going too deep into something completely different. All I'm trying to say in this video, aside from my venting, is if you take nothing from this video, take this. You're going to hit several crossroads on your journey. On your road to where you want to be, you're going to hit several crossroads. And you will have to make a decision at every one of these checkpoints to either continue, figure out a way to move forward, you know, trying to achieve some of the endeavors that you have in your mind, your desires, or you can fold like a fucking lawn chair and then go get a 9-to-5 that you're gonna fucking hate, you're not gonna perform that well at, and then you're gonna get fired and start the cycle all over again. In some regards, maybe I'm talking to myself. I used to work in tech before I fully dove into acting and modeling. But at the same time though, even though I face some of these challenges, I think to myself, what is the alternative? Like, yes, I was getting paid really good money working in tech. I was in tech sales. But at the same time though, that did nothing for me from like a fulfillment perspective. And I'm not trying to be esoteric and think to myself like, oh, I'm better than those who are focused solely on money. Nah, bro, if you're trying to get to the bag the quickest way possible, I'm gonna be completely honest with you and upfront. In entrepreneurship, like being an entrepreneur, it really depends on the industry, but being an entrepreneur or anything else isn't necessarily the fastest way to get the money. Will you make more money in these endeavors in the long run? Potentially. But at the same time though, fam, if you're just trying to get some money to like pay off bills, you wanna go to a nice restaurant here and there, you wanna buy yourself some nice clothes, get the 9-to-5. Get the 9-to-5, because I'm telling you right now, unless you actually wanna be in these things, the challenges you face, you're not gonna wanna continue. Like, some people ask me, how do I start in modeling? How do I start in acting? The first thing I ask them is, how much do you actually want to be in this industry? Because it's not easy. It's not easy. You will get ghosted, you'll get canceled on, people will choose another model or actor, even after, you know, you've already been chosen for the role, whatever the case may be, things can happen. But it's up to you to decide if you want to continue or not. And don't just take that example as an end-all be-all for just that industry. You could apply that thought process to literally everything. Shit, you could apply it to your 9-to-5. You know, unless you actually want to be there, what's the likelihood of you actually succeeding in that 9-to-5? It's slim to none at best, and Slim just left town. So all in all, I've been rambling long enough. This video has been long enough. Thank you so much for being here. But again, take this. If you take nothing else, take this. Fam, you only have one life. Genuinely, I mean that. Not even on some weird cliche bullshit. You genuinely only have one life. And if you, whatever you decide to do with your one life, you better be fucking happy with it. Because the last thing you want is to be lucky enough to be on a deathbed. Some people out here don't even make it to a deathbed, right? Like, I just watched the video on Instagram of some older woman, God rest her soul, fucking had a heart attack driving her car at like 100 miles per hour, crashed into a whole ass house. What do you think? She gonna be put on a bed, an open casket? Nah, this lady got turned into fucking toothpaste. They're gonna scoop her up and put her in whatever fucking box they could fill in, you know? But if you're lucky and blessed enough to end up on a deathbed, right, surrounded by the proverbial family that loves you so much, I would hope at that point you have come to the conclusion that you've made the right decisions, you've done the things you've wanted to do, and ultimately you've lived life with no regrets. Because I think personally, worse than failure is regret. And I don't have a lot of regrets. I only have a couple. One of the biggest regret of mine, though, is not pursuing my music career when I had it in the palm of my hands. I had opened for Meth and Redman. You know, I met their tour manager. They wanted to take me on tour, but I left. Is there a fucking bee behind me? There's a big ass bee behind me right now. And I left. I left because my girlfriend at the time was upset and wanted to leave. I really traded up my exes, which is the funny part, we're not even together anymore, right? But I really traded up my ex's feelings for my future. Dog, could you imagine? Could you imagine where I'd be right now? You know, but listen, at the end of the day, I say all of that to just remind you, fam, you only got one life, you know? This shit is short as fuck. Short as fuck. And you gotta not only decide that, you know, this is what you want, if whatever it is, I don't know what it is, right? But you have to ultimately make that decision and say, this is what I want, this is what I'm gonna get. I don't care if I'm starving, I don't care if I'm dying. Like, I gotta be honest with you guys, there's been times where like I've gone a month or two with no shoots, and you know, the money that I had, like the emergency money I had, was depleted because I spent it all on bills. And there's been times where I would have to wait a week of no fucking food. 3-4 days, damn near a week of no food to get paid from a gig, just so I can get food. That's crazy. But this is what I want. I mean, obviously I don't want to starve, right? But I want to be able to continue to make money from doing this kind of stuff. And not only that, I want to make a good living. I want to make a decent amount of money doing this kind of stuff. So take all that, apply it to your own situation, and you know, I'll leave y'all with this. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, what do you think? Do you feel as though I'm on point with what I'm saying? Like, yes, disregard the venting in the beginning, of course, but let me know what you think about the end of this message. Did it resonate with you? Do you feel like I'm incorrect in some areas? I encourage you to comment. Will I reply to every comment? Probably not, but I encourage you to comment anyway, because I would love to get a conversation about this going, because I feel like if we can get better conversations about these things, then perhaps we could pivot society in a different direction. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, we got new videos coming out Wednesday and Friday. I was sick for a little bit, so I didn't make any videos, but we're back, baby. Don't mind the voice, apologies, and even if, you know, you do mind the voice, fuck you. Anyway, this is it, man. I'm out of here. I'm gonna see y'all on Wednesday. Peace.